Alright, so welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial on the Rust developer roadmap, you'll be trying to explore the entire concept of the web development, right? So we'll be picking Actix-Web app, and then we're going through how to work with databases using SQLx, and then you see how to work with serialization and deserialization using Serde, right? So this is going to be an entire workflow. I'm trying to build a simple web interface, a REST API, using CRUD. So CRUD is a very important concept to understand in case you want to be a developer in any programming language, because once you understand how to build a simple CRUD app, you can build any kind of application. So what do we mean by CRUD? So CRUD stands for create, update, create, read, update, delete, right? There's two more, but this is what you'll be doing in this tutorial. So the create, read, update, delete maps to the HTTP verbs for request. So we have post for create, get for read, put for update, and then or patch for update, partial update, and then delete for delete, right? And these things are also used to talk to our database via SQL. So create, insert, update, delete, just like in SQL. So we're trying to build a very simple web application that has an API following the CRUD method that talks to an SQL database, and then we will see how to interact with Swagger. So Swagger is like a simple front end that is used to interface on the API in case you don't have a full front end service, so that you can easily interact with the API. So let's see how to build this simple workflow. So we're starting from building the simple API, build the CRUD method, add the database support, and then we'll come back to the Swagger. So I'll go back again to our workspace here, which is where we are working. I'm going to go with cargo, new REST API, right? So this is where we're going to go, and I'll move into my REST API and I'll open it with VS Code. So as you saw, this is what we're trying to build by the end of this tutorial. So I'll close the old one that is running. So let's close the old one, which is this one here, and then we will start building everything from scratch. So let's close this. Okay, perfect. So I'll come back here, and then inside my application we'll start writing some code. So first of all, we will just build a very basic application. So instead of my main here, just going to go back, and then we'll be importing the packages that we need. So the packages that we need for our application is we need Actix-Web app, as we saw inside here. We need Actix, which is a very powerful web framework in Rust, which we'll be trying to use. So I'll just go back here, and I'll just go with my cargo, add Actix-Web, and then we'll also be using SQLs, which is also very important, and then we'll also be using Serde. So these are the three main stuff, and once I do that, it's going to be added to my TOML file. Perfect. So let's go back here, and then let's import them. So I'm just going to be importing all the various things we need from Actix-Web, which is going to be my use Actix-Web. Perfect. And then I'm going to change this one to an async function, and I'm going to decorate this one with my Actix-Web that main, so that now it's an async function now, right? So this is useful to be able to run this one well. And then we also need to specify the server that you are running on. So it's Actix-Web. Just build a server interface, and then we just change this one. So this is async function main, and I need to return a response. So let's return a response, which is going to be a result, and then this result is going to take in standard. Then we just take IO because it's a server, then response. And we need to change this one and refer it to as we do the configuration for the server, right? So this is the basic way. Okay, so let's work on it. So how do we face this issue, right? So first, I'm just going to go back here, and then I'm going to import some packages that we need to help us to set up the env to see the logs. So this is going to be the ones we need, and then I need to import env. So let's go with use env logger, and then I also need to use .env, right? right? And then we can install this one by just going with cargo env logger and then .env. This is useful to help us see the logs in our terminal, right? Then we need to specify the server configuration. So the actual server, which is going to be my HTTP server. So we have my HTTP server here, and then we will now use this HTTP server to run our service, right? So HTTP server, just create an instance of it, and then this will take in move, and then we are using a closure, and then we just pass in our app. So app, create a new instance of the app, and then we can now add the app data. So this app data is going to be in case you want to add a database, which we'll do later on. I'll just go with my wrap, and the wrap is going to take in my logger, right? And then I'll just go down here and I'll specify, in case I have a service that I want to use, I can just pass in that particular service, right? In case it's a URL. So let's go to that index page, something like this. And then we need to bind this. So after building all of this, we need to specify the port we want to listen on, 27.0.0.1, and then we will just specify the port. Then we need to run, and then we need to await. Perfect. That is all, right? So if I save it, now everything is working. We need to create this our index page, just to create this simple index page. So you can just create all the routes. So we'll be creating all the routes that we need. So you create all the CRUD routes, and then we work on it from there. So to create a simple one to make sure that our app is working, so I'll go with fn, then I'll just go with my index page, and then this one takes in, you can just go with a simple app, something very simple, something very basic, so that we can see if the app is actually working. So let's create a lifetime static, which is going to be a string, and then we're just going to return hello CRUD API, right? So that is all. So this is something very basic, and let's ensure that this works. So we have the fn map here, and then one of the ways that if this is not working, you can just go with the route, and then you specify that the route is going to be this, and then you just go with the HTTP method. So this is another way, right? So there are several ways you can establish this idea. So it's going to be this, then web, so we have get, then to, then I'll specify I want to get it to my index page, right? So this is it. So let's ensure that this works. We have the route. So the reason we are having this error here is that there is something that we are missing. So we create a new app, we create a logger to log everything, and then we specify that we want to get the web, then get to the index page that we want it to be, right? So this we have to close, and then once we close it, we can run this our app. So in case I want to run it, I can just run our app like this. So cargo run, and then it's going to run the entire stuff, and then we can go to this endpoint that you have created to see if the application is working. So what we need in the next session is that we need to establish the database connection and establish the model structure that is going to be used to collect the data to store inside the database, right? So these are the two main things that we need to do. So whilst it's doing that, we just go back again, and then we will explore. So we want to build a simple CRUD app, right, for create, read, update, delete. So in that case, we will specify the model structure here. I can just go back here. Let's go up. I'm going to call it as it's going to be our model. So the model structure, which we will just use a struct for it. So it has started, that's already started. So let's check it out. So see that because I specified this option here, right, we can see the logs here, right, which is very important. So let's go back to our localhost 8000, and then we can see we have hello CRUD app. So our app works. We have built a basic app. Let's work on the other aspect of it. So first, let's do the model structure. So this is going to be our struct, and we're going to have two structs. I'm going to call it as blog post. This struct is going to have an ID of i32 integer. Then we need the title of the blog. It's going to be a string. Then we need the author of the blog, which is also going to be a string. And then we need the content, right? So these are the two main stuff. So the content. So these are going to be our main struct to receive information. Then we also need one for input, something like input serializer, just to get the same stuff, because when you are creating or inputting data into database, you don't want to be supplying the ID. You want the ID to be automatically generated. So I'll take it out from here, and I'll call this one as new blog post, right? You can call it as create blog post, whatever, but this is simple for me. And now we need to serialize it. So that is where we go with Serde. So Serde stands for serializer, the serializer, which is used to serialize data into JSON and any other format, which is very useful. So to add it to our system, I'll go back again to here, and I'll go with Serde. Then I'll specify I want the features called derive. And now it's going to add it to my cargo.toml file with the derive feature. And then I can come back here, and I'll just go with my decorator. So derive, can't spell, supposed to be, I always derive, right? And then this takes in the serializer, right? So serialize and then deserialize. And then let's add debug to it to be able to print some stuff. So see that automatically I've imported it, and now I need to do the same for my input serializer. Perfect. So this is our model structure we'll be using, right? Perfect. Now we need, so we have done that. So we have gotten this our model structure. We need to create endpoints for the rest. So I'll just go back again and creating endpoint for, so we have, this is the default one, but I need to create one for create blog post. I should just go to create blog post, because we need to create one for each of them. So let's go to create blog post. Then we have another page called read, or you can call it as, say, get all blog posts. I'm making it very verbose. Then this is going to be get blog post, right, single. So this is going to be like the read blog post. You can just cut as read blog post. And then this is going to be my update. And then the last one will be the delete. So we have gotten the three methods, or not the three, the four: create, read, update, delete, right? So we have the create, update, delete, get, right? So the get is read. We can call it as read all, but let's keep it like that. And then I'll come down here, and I can now add them as services or as routes, right? Anyhow you want it to be. Perfect. So this is going to be our CRUD methods, right? Perfect. Now let's work on establishing the database connection, because we need to establish the database connection so that we can start populating the data into it. So I'll go back again, and we are using Postgres to help us with that. So I'll come down here. Inside here, I'm going to do my database configuration, right? So we are using Postgres to help us with it. So first of all, I will need to add SQL. So add SQLs, right? And then I'll just go with feature Postgres. and this is going to add the SQL version and the Postgres here for us. We also need a runtime for this, right, to be able to work. And then I'll just come down here, and once I do that, you see that now we're having all of these errors, right? All of this. Interesting. So it's missing some build, so I'm just going to go back again and add one more thing to I have to add one more thing to the cargo file to allow us with the build, which is going to be the runtime. So we need a specific runtime, so I'll just go down here and let's add a runtime, right? And let's cargo check again, and then the errors are gone. Perfect. So let's build the database connection. How do we do that? How do we connect to the database? So there are several ways you can do that. You can do just a single pool, but you can do multiple pools so that you can have multiple connections to it. So to do that, I'm just going to go back here, and then I need to import SQLs. So SQLs is not an ORM. If I go back, let's check it out. SQLs is not an ORM. It's a pure Rust-like SQL toolkit. It's not really an ORM like Diesel or CRM, or in case you're coming from Django, right? It just creates the SQL code, or it gives you an interface to be able to create your own SQL and then to interact with your database, right? Something like that. So it's like SQL query builder, something like this. So let's see how to work with it. So I'm just going to use SQL Postgres. Then I'm going to specify the pool, and then the pool options. You can use any of them. You can just use the pool, and then I will specify again. Let's create some functions. We will create some functions to establish the connection, right? So let's go down here. I'll come down here. Let's do it here. So let's create DB functions for connection. So it's going to be something like this. So pop async, and I'm going to create a simple function that establish connection, and then this is going to take in the result, and I'll take in my PG pool, and then I'll also take in the SQLs error, right? So in case there's any error. Perfect. And then I'll specify my database. So database URL. So here we can just use Postgres database. I already have Postgres already running, and I'm calling it as Rest DB, right? So this is what I'm going to use. So if I come back here and I check the properties, so this is it. So it's a Rest DB. The name of the is Rest DB, and then I'm just going to get the parameters and everything, right? All the things that I need, right, for this particular database. So I just go back here and I'll paste in the path to it. You can also see the password. The password is very simple. Yeah, don't hack me. Okay, so this is going to be our database, right? And then from there, I'm just going to create my PG pool options. Then let's create a new instance of it. Then specify the maximum number of connections. So let's give it like 5, right? You can make it 10 as you wish. Then let's connect. Then I'm going to pass in my database URL. Then since it's an async, I need to just wait. Right, so this is our function that you're using to establish the connection. Perfect. So we are done with a very important part of the application. Then the next thing we need to do is that we need to go back into the main application itself, where the server is, and then we will now connect it, right? So I'll go down here. The reason I'm doing this is so that you can use it over in different applications. So I'll come down here, and then I'm just going to call this let pool be equal to the established connection that we created. Then I'll pass in established connection await. Then we can just go and say expect in case there is something, right? So failed to connect. You can handle this error gracefully if you want, but let's go with the simple one. Perfect. And once you create the pool, you will now add the pool that you have created here. So dot app data, You can create an app state and use it, but this is also going to work well. So web, then data, then let's create a new instance, and I'll pass in my pool.clone so that we can use it over and over. So this now connects our application to the database, right? And we can use it for all the different routes. Perfect. So we have gotten a way of connecting to the database, right? But with SQLx, we need to specify how the data is going to be, how the table structure is going to be. So we already saw from here, this is our model structure. We need to create a table that looks like this, right? So how do we do that? So there are several ways we can do that. So first of all, you will need to let SQLx generate some features for us, right? So let's see how to do that. So I'll go back again to my terminal here, and I'm going to go and create a migrations file. So it's going to be my cargo SQLx. There is an SQLs CLI, which is going to be like this. So install SQLs CLI, and this is going to install the SQL CLI. It's already installed, and then I can just go with my cargo SQLx. Then I can go with migrate. We have different options. You can first of all create a table that you want to use. So in case you have a table that you want to use, you can create the table and then you use that particular table, right? Which is very important because it's not like Django, right? It's not just an ORM. So you need to specify that you want to create a table, right? Otherwise it's not, I mean, you need to specify that, okay, I want to create this particular table. Yeah, so one moment, I'm just checking something. You have to specify, okay, I want to create a table to use for my work, right? For the database stuff. And how do we do that? So you need to, one moment. So you can do it in two ways. You can just go with this option here. You can see that I've created some before. Yeah, I could have done it like this long time, sorry. Yeah, so you need to just do SQLx, right? Migrate, add this to add it. If I go with this option here, now it's going to create a migrations directory using the date, and then it's going to create blog post. So this is the name I want to give to it, the migration script. And with this, you can track all the things you have done, right? Then inside here, I'm going to create a simple database SQL code just to add a table, right? Now you already know how it is done. It's just saying that something like this. Just say create a table, right? If not as it, if not as this, and then you just specify the name of the table like that. So these are something very basic stuff that we always do, right? So let's go with this here. So create table if not as this. So I'm going to call the table as blog post. It can be blog post like this if you want it to be, and then you just specify this. So by specifying ID serial primary key, it means that you want it to be automatically generated. Then you specify this is test, and then this we don't want it to be, we don't want the test to be titled to be none, so not null, right? And then this can be null, the following two can be null. So by this option here, we can actually store how we created a database, right? And this is useful. It's not like Django or any of these frameworks which does most of these things for you. This you have to do it yourself, right? So create table if not exist, blog post, let's call it as plural. Perfect, that is all, right? And then I will just, we want the title to continue to stay. Then how do we run this? To run it, we just go with, we have to specify run and then dash that db URL, and this is where you specify this database. So let's save this, go back to your here, and the database that you use for your connection, you have to specify this route here. So it's saying that, okay, was previously applied but it's missing in the resolved migrations. So this was already applied, right? Because I already have the database already and I already have this data there. So that's why it's saying that it was already applied, right? Very simple. So if I check it here and I go back to my DB, I go to the query tool or SQL tool. If I check it back, backslash D, so we have it here, right? So we have one here and then we have this one, right? Perfect. This one here, and now I can see it here, right? I can, in case I want to see the content of it, I can just go with the blog, dt blog post. You can see it here. You can see the table. So we have the ID already specified, the title, the content, and then the author, right? And just specify the primary key using B3. Perfect. So that is how to create it, right? So we just first create the table, you pass in your data file, and then you just run it this way to create the table and then create the fields. You can also create another file for, in case you have the chance, you can create one for, let's say, app, say drop.sql, which you just have your code to drop the database in case you want it to be, right? So this you can do later. So let's take it off. Okay, now let's go down here. If you have created our database, you have created a connection. Now how do we now work on the individual functions for this? So to work on the individual functions that will be used to get the data and put inside our code, how do we do that? So that is where we'll be using our logic, our simple understanding of SQL. So I'll just go back here. Then I'm going to go to, okay, SQL S functions. We created some functions to interact with our database. The first one is our code as pop async, then function. Then this is going to be a simple function that creates the post, right? Then I'm going to pass in the pool. So this pool is going to be the PG pool that we created for the database connection. And then I'll pass in the post, which is going to be the post item. So this time I'm going to pass in the new blog post. So the reason we are passing this one is because we don't want to have an ID. We want the ID to be automatically generated by the database engine. Perfect. And then I'll just return result responder. I want to get if everything is okay, return the actual data, which is this one here. If it is not okay, I want you to return an error. So let's go to SQLx error. We will modify this error later, but let's go on with this. And then how do we get information from it? So we can just go with select post be equal to SQLs, and then there are several ways. So with SQLs, we can use the query to query a database, right? So and then here you can just write and say select 1 plus 1, right? You can use this option here to do that, right? So this will work. So this is another way, right? So and then you just specify the method, right? Whatever you want to do, execute or something, right? So there's execute, to execute, and you pass in your pool. This will work, right? And then you just have to await it, right? Perfect. So this is one way you can also do that, right? So you can use query to run it and it's going to run. There is also query as, because we are using a struct here, we want to just use the query as. Then with the query as, I'm just going to pass in my database structure. So it's going to be the blog post here. Perfect. And then I will now pass in my database, right? So let's pass in the code. So what you are doing is that we create a post, we have the connection, you have the post that you want to pass there, and then we are now going to pass that post here, and then we're going to pass in our SQL code. So there's going to be insert into blog post title comment this particular value, returning x, returning asterisk. This is a Postgres feature, not SQL, just Postgres. And then I will now bind what I want to bind. So bind means connect to what you want to put there. So it's going to bind and insert to these respective places there, what you are binding, right? So it's going to go with my post. Then I'll just pass in the title. Then I'll go down again, then bind again. What am I binding to it? I want the second place for this one, which is going to be my content. So post.content. Then the next one is going to be the post.order, right? And then at the end, I'm just going to fetch one. So there's fetch one because I'm just creating. I want to fetch what was created. Then I wait. Then let's close it, right? Okay. Perfect. So this is a simple option that we have created here, right? So we have let post. Then we are using SQLs to query. Right, we are querying the database that you are connected to, which is this one here, which is why we are connecting it to here. Fetch one. But then we want to write this our code by ourselves. So that is one thing that can be tricky when you are working with SQLx. It is good, but sometimes it can be, you have to know the syntax, right? In case you are using Diesel or CRM, it will just generate this code for you. But with SQLx, you have to write the code yourself. Perfect. But it's good, right? So that you have full control of what you want to do. Then there is this option here. We are seeing here that the trait for bound for this is not satisfied. So we need from row to be bound to our trait, or you need our struct to inherit from row. And this from row comes from here. So I save it here. The from row comes from SQLx. So I just go down here, go with use SQLx. Then we have from row. So with from row, I can now add it here. So let's add it here, and then let's also add it here, right? So that we have it here, and then the error goes, right? So you see that the type is more private than the type quit post. So we need to make it, if it's private, that means that we have to make it what, public, in order to be able to see it, right? So now I just have to create my pop here and then my pop here to make it public. And now the error is gone, right? Perfect. So sometimes I have to just be reading the error. Okay, that is it. So this is our create post. So we have understood the concept. So just SQLx query as, then you pass in the particular stuff you want, and then your code. So I don't want to go through creating it one after the other. I'll just copy and paste to save us time because it's always the same. So I'm just going to paste it, and then we will see, and I'll explain it, right? So here, so let's check it out. So what you're going to do is the same thing. So we have one to create the post using insert. We have one to read the post using select. I select from blog post, and then we fetch everything, and then we have to get a single post. So we are just select all from blog post where ID is equal to SR, right? And with this option here, it's automatically going to unpack them all. Perfect. And then we have update. So we update post, and this time you're not using the query as you're using just the query. Then you're going to pass it here, then bind them individually, and then at the end you are going to execute. Okay, there's a difference, right? So this one you're just passing the code, then you're binding them together, but this one you're just allowing the SQLx to do the serialization and everything. Okay, and then there is one for delete. right? So we just delete from the post where the ID, and then you just bind it. Perfect. Okay, and then all of them return a result and an SQL error. So this is going to be the SQL functions we'll be using for our code. Now let's start connecting all that you have done with our CRUD method for the endpoint to this. So I'll go down here, and then we start writing the code for it, right? So first of all, I'm just going to go back to the create blog post, and I need to now pass in data because I need to connect to the database. Then web, then this is going to be the data. Then I'll pass in the PG pool. The PG pool that we created. Remember that we created a PG pool. We imported PG pool from here, and we created a connection. So we are now connecting them together to the endpoint, right? And then I need to also pass in the form data. So let's go to this new post, which in this case is going to take in web. Then I want to send the data by JSON. Then the data I'm sending is going to be my new blog post. Remember that the new blog post doesn't have the ID. There is no ID, right? The ID will be automatically generated for us. So this is going to be the new blog post. And then I need to change this. We are no more returning a string. We now want to return a result. And then I'm going to return implement responder, right? Then since I'm returning I need to also return SQL error, right? So we can just return an SQLs error, right? We want to return an SQL error, the same error here, this type of error, right? So the similar from error is what we are returning here, right? Perfect. And then once we are done, we will now create our post. So let post be equal to create blog post. This is the function. So this create blog post here is going to be, we called it as create post, right? Okay, I think this is better. So I'll just change it here. And this create post will take in the data, which is a connection. Then it's going to take in the new data. Perfect. That is all, right? Then we can do await dot expect. If I go with that await like this, because we are returning an error, we need to handle this error well, right? So let's go with OK. Then I need to pass in the HTTP response dot OK, and this one takes in the JSON, then the post that was sent, that was saved, right? But doing it this way is good. However, we are getting this error here. So this is not serialized, right? This error is not satisfied. So we need to serialize something to allow the error to work. So let's modify. I just have to go to expect. Then I'll call it as field. And now it works. So this is not the best way. This is not the best way of doing it, right? This is not the best way. But let's try it first. So we have one for creating the post. It's not to use. So you're saying that this is not to use. So to use it, I'll just go down here. And then I'll go to this endpoint here. And I'll just go with the service. Then I'll just pass in here, right? So this is it. So this now is going to be added here. But the moment I said create blog post, right, we are getting this error. The trait Postgres Actix-Web new post implementing this is not satisfied. So how do we fix this error, right? How do we fix this? The reason is that we need to specify a route on top of it. So now I'll come down here, and then I need to specify a route. So this is going to be post, and then by convention it goes with the blog. So I save it, Now the error is gone. So the error is gone, but now we have another error here, right? And the error is saying that, okay, this is not satisfied. So response error is not satisfied. So we do not need to be sending this type of error. We need to return a response error, right? So that is something that we have to fix. So let's quickly work on the error messages that we want to send. So I'm going to change this one. I'm going to call it as API error. So I'm just going to create a struct or an enum called an API error to handle all of these errors we are getting, right? Otherwise it will take a lot of time. So let's go up here. So let's do that. So simply to handle with all the errors, because it's important, because sometimes it will take you a lot of issues. So I'll just go back here and now just come down here. So let's import error as SQL error, and I want to also import Actix-Web HTTP status. So HTTP status code, and then I also want to use the Actix-Web error and response error, right? So that was the error that we got that message here when we're trying to work on it. And now we need to implement this. We need to create this particular error handling function, right? So how do we do that? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create an enum called API error, and this API error is going to take in, you have internal server error. Okay, so there's an internal error which is going to be a string, and then we do another one for database, in case database error, which is a string, because you can also have database error, and then not found, in case we don't find anything. And then the next one is going to be validation error. So this, you can just use it over and over again, right? Sometimes these things can be cumbersome, and because we want to serialize it, we will do the same thing we did the struct without the from row. So we just debug. We don't need the from row, that's all, so that we can serialize it up and down. Then we need to do some implementation for them, right? We need to implement some stuff, because even though we have done this error here, we are still getting, see now it's working because of the response. It's working here, but this is saying that API response error, this response error is not satisfied. So we need to implement the trait response error for it, and then we see it here. Right, so we need to implement it. So how do we do that? I'll go down here and then I'll just implement it. So implement response error for the API error. Then I'll just go with fn error response, so that it's even automatically generates for me, which is cool. But we don't need this, right? We don't need a box error. We want to just get the response and work on it. So I'll just copy them just to save us time, because, and I'll explain. So what we are doing is that we are going to implement response error for API error, and then once we do that, we are just going to go with create a function called error response, and we are matching it. So based on the error that we are getting, we are going to match it internally to HTTP response error from Actix. So we have one for internal server error, which is going to be internal server error. In case there's a database error, it will be database error. If it's not found, it will be a not found error. If it's validation, it's bad. Okay, so these things, we can actually use these commands right here. Instead of implementing it here, we can actually use it here, right? Perfect. So that is one of them that you can also use. Okay. So that is it, right? So this entire stuff is useful. Okay, Now let's see one more stuff. So why are we having this here? So the type name API is defined multiple times, so let's ensure that we don't have it multiple times. Okay, yeah. Okay, perfect. Now let's see why we have this error again. So we said, okay, API error doesn't implement standard format display. So you may be thinking, okay, since we have debug, it will work, or we can now do, let's say, display, right? But if you do display like that, it still doesn't work. So let's see another way we can do that. So we can implement display for it and then modify it. So let's go down here, then let's implement display. So this here, we need to import this. So quick fix to import format from the standard library. And now what you're doing is that you want to implement display so that we can display the appropriate error to the user, right? So all of this thing we did sometimes can be handled for you in case you are using a different approach, right? So you can just, and you can also repeat the same thing over and over again, right? Okay, so that is all. And now the error is gone, right? We don't have any error here. Perfect. So we have this method to create our post. So one of the ways we can do that is I can just go back again to postman, since we already have the post here, and then I'll go to close this, and this is the endpoint. If I go with this, we don't get anything here, but in case I want to post, I'll just go with post, and then I'll switch to body JSON. Then I can now paste in my struct. So this is going to be, we have the title, so Rust roadmap. The next one is going to be the content. Building web app an API, and then we can just give the name. So this is going to be the author. So let's Jesse, right? So now we are sending it to this point. So if everything works, we should get some response. But the reason this is not working is that we are not even running the application. So let's run it. It's compiling, and then once everything is done, we can work on it. So see that building an API from scratch can take a lot of time, right? Can take a lot of time, but I hope you are learning something, and I hope it's not too scattered around. Remember that we are learning, right? So it's a plan to learn Rust. So you make a lot of mistake, and you see the whole process, and then you learn together with me. Okay, so whilst it is doing that, we also need to do one for this get all. So just as we have this here, we need to get one for get on the post. So this time it's not going to be post, is going to be get, right? So this is going to list everything. And then if I go back here, I think that's finished. So let's see. I come down here and I click on. So now it worked, right? So we got 200 response. So I can just add another one. So let's add Rust developer, and then this will be a different person, so JCharis, right? And if I click on it, so now we have 3, right? So it's actually working perfectly well. Okay, and you can see the logs there, and we have 200 response. Perfect. So now let's work on the get. So how do we get all the data, right? So to get every data from it, we can just do this option here. We want to be able to get all the posts, right? So to get all the posts, just go with let post be equal to get post. Now that we had get all post, which is this function, right? So this is going to get all of them. So this is the function we are running here. So get all post, it takes in the database connection, And then once it takes in the database connection, we want to, not the database connection, we want to get all the posts, right? So we only just want to get the pool. So let's pass it. You can just use the pool like this, but since we are using this approach here, right, let's use the same to keep it consistent. I'll pass it here, and then we are not sending any other data, so this alone is okay. So let's go with the result as we did. You can just go with responder, but let's use the one we defined because we have already defined it, so we have to use it. We wrote a lot of code and then let's change this one to data, right? And then you can just go .await .map error. Now because we are using this API error, we can actually map it. So I can just copy it and then go with map from, so it will automatically pick and then map that particular error. So perfect, right? So this is going to automatically pick it and then map the error. So get all post, we take the post, we get the error message that we have, and then we need to specify okay. So going to be okay because we are returning response result, which is a responder, and then an error. Then this is going to be HTTP response in case everything is okay. We want to return JSON, then I'll pass in the post, and then it's gone. So this is how to work with it. So it's giving us a signature error. But we will fix it, right? So it's giving us a signature error. So this is a type mismatch, right? So we have SQL error and then function API error. So why is it? So we need a closure. We don't need a closure. Okay, this error can be SQL, right? It can be database error. So we need to come down here and then also implement this, right? So we need, because it can also be a database error, so we need to also convert the SQL error for this, right? We need to do the from so that we can do this from, right? So in order for us to do this from, we need to implement it here. That is the purpose, so that we're able to translate the database error well, right? Okay, that is it. So now we have gotten the get all post. We can now do the same thing for the just reading one. In case you just want to read one post, we can just come down here. Let's copy the same thing here, because now we have written a lot of code. We need to, this must be just one, so let's copy this. And this here will take in a path, right? So ID, and since it's taking in a path, we need to pass in the data that we want to pass there, just as we did here. So we pass in data, and then we need to also specify the path. So path is going to be web, then path, and this is going to take in the I32 for the data, right? Referring to this that we are trying to take. Perfect. And we need to use a function that we created. So we can simply do match. So get single post, and a single post is going to take in the ID, the data, and then the path. So the path is going to be path dot into inner. Right, so what you are trying to do is that we are getting this path passing to this particular function here, and then if everything is working well, so dot await, we will now return okay. So okay, if we get the response, if there is a data, I want to get HTTP response and then send that data. So okay dot JSON, now pass in my post. So this is going to be, in case everything is working well, this will send that particular data there, right? If there is an error, we now want to return that error. So we can just say if there's an error, if the if error, we can have two types of error. So the error can be that there is no row found. So if there's no row found, I want to return some stuff, right? So error, then I'll pass in the API error. Then here I'll just say not found. Then I'll pass in, say, most of the time we can say post not found, or we can say detail not found, right? Item not found or detail not found is better than to string. Perfect. And then if everything works well, so what you're saying is that, okay, get this error. So if we need to do this, so error, if this error is not there, we need to have an else if. Else we need another error. Yeah, and now we have it fixed, right? So what you're saying is that, okay, fetch the data per the parameters given. If there's data, return it as JSON. If there's an error, there can be two types of error. There can be an error in which we cannot find the data. You say that the data is not found, and there can also be any other form of error. Then we handle that type of error here. So this is going to be for the read. Then we will do the same for the update and delete. Let's do the one for the delete because it's similar. Okay, let's do for the update. So the update is going to be the same thing, similar like this. Let's make it simple. So the update is that we would take the data pool, the UI, right? We need to specify the ID, and then updated post, that is the blog post, the data. Then we run this particular function, and then we return the data, right? Then for the delete, we will just go with the same thing we did. So delete is going to be delete. We need to import delete. Then delete will take in the same thing above, because it's almost the same. If you are deleting, you specify the ID that you want to delete. And then we will just pass in our response and error like before. And the idea behind the delete is very similar to this, right? Because delete and post are almost the same idea, right? You're just passing in an ID. So we will just do something like this. So much. We had the delete post, we takes in the data. So we need to pass in the data in the path, because it's just like get. Right, so something like this. And then once we have gotten that data, we will pass in the ID, right? So we want to pass in the ID, so we can just go with path into inner, then the same thing we did into inner with await. Then we just do the same thing we did here, something similar to this. So to be just almost the same, right? To be the same, because nothing changes. So we are deleting the post. If you don't find it, we just say we don't find it. So item, so detail not found, and then you just pass it there, right? Perfect. So we have gotten the delete. We have gotten the update. We have gotten the read. Now let's compile and see. So we can compile with kill, so that doesn't show the error. So it's still like standard format path, and then let's see if it works. If I come down here to my Swagger, this is post. If I switch from here to get, and then I take off this, we want to go back to none. It is a get. If I click on this, you should see, hopefully it says that cannot be found. It's funny. So let's see if there's an error. Okay, get post block. Okay, so the reason it cannot find it, right, is because we have to define it inside our route. That's why it can't find it. So I have to go back here, do the same, right? So we need one for the get all post, we have one for the read single post, and one for the delete post, and then we need one for the update. Perfect. And then if I go back and I stop it, see that some paths are not used. But if I come down here and I click on this, so now we have the data coming, right? So that is how to build a simple CRUD app from scratch. So you have seen how to build an API, you have seen how to work with the SQLx, you've seen how to build create, read, update, delete, you've seen how these HTTP methods map to each of these, and then you have built this simple one. So thank you for watching the tutorial. I hope you have learned something, and you notice that you are using postman, right? Which is okay, which is good, it's not bad. You can delete, add, and the rest. So if I go back here and I just specify number 1, go with this, you get only 1, right? So that means that it's working. Go with 2, click on this, you get some data. It is working, which is nice, but not everybody has this, right? Not everybody has postman, so that is where we have to use Swagger, right? So in the next tutorial, we're trying to explore how to use Swagger, because it's taking about 1 hour now. So we will switch, and then in the next tutorial, we'll see how to use Swagger in our app. So let's recap. So to recap, I've seen how to build a simple SQL app, CRUD app, using Actix and then SQLx. So these are all the things that we need. At the beginning, we just imported Actix, and then we imported these ones to help us show this particular logs here. Then we imported Serde, Serializer, to help us serialize our data. Then SQLx, all of this for connecting to the database. And we created a function to create a connection pool to our specified database here. This, in real production, you should not be doing this, right? You should use an env and for it, right? Not like this. Okay. And then we created the model structure. So this is the model structure. We apply some decorators on it to allow us to serialize them, to view them, and then to be able to query them with the from row. And then we created another input serializer just to send the data, because we want to automatically increment our data. Because in our definition here, we specify that serial, right? So automatically to create an auto increment key, primary key. So that's why we did not specify it here. So we have 2, and then we created individual functions so to insert the data. So we have one SQLx function that insert the data. So we take the database connection pool, then we pass in the serialized struct, right? Then we are using query as, we take in the struct and then our SQL statement, and then we bind them per what we want to insert, and then we fetch them. So we created one function to create, another function to get the code, which is select all, another one to select per ID for individual items, one to update, and then one to delete, right? And then from there, we created a simple error handling function, or enum, that handles all the different forms of error. And then we implemented a response for it, response error. We implemented display for them so that we can use it in our route. And this is our route. We created a route. We created a route with the blog post, with the get, so post get, so post for creating, that is connected to the create post SQL function. Get for getting all of them. We have read post for this, right? Perfect. And then we have update for update, and delete, right? And then inside our main app, we just initialize our env, we establish our database connection, then we specified our service and our endpoint here. That is all. So thank you for watching the tutorial. In case you have any question or contribution, you can put inside the comments below, and then see you another time. Stay blessed. Bye.